Hey there, I'm Gary Schuster. This is Innovation Cafe, and today we're telling something different. Going forward, I'm going to make 3 versions of my videos. One's going to be super short, and it's intended to give you a really high-level overview and maybe let you know if you want to watch the long-form video. Another is medium form. You don't have a super large amount of time, but you would like to know about the subject as cards. And this, of course, is the long-form video. And the long-form video is enough to really give you a good grounding in the subject. So let's hit it. Today, I'm going to show you how to go from dreamer to inventor in 7 days. And not just any inventor, but one who's ready to turn creativity into reality and make a difference. Whether the difference is in your own life, your family's life, or the world. All the same process, and let's get started. Day 1. Let's kick things off with a critical mindset shift. Your journey begins with understanding you're not just a passive observer of the world. You're a solution creator. Those quirks you always thought were a little annoying for you, they can be your secret weapon. Start with neurodiversity. It's not a limitation when it comes to creativity. What is an invention? An invention is something that no one's done before. If you think differently than other people because of a neurodiverse trait, you are much more likely to come up with the invention that no one's thought of before. So it's a superpower, whether it's ADHD, right here, I can connect things that other people don't connect because my mind wanders as part of ADHD. OCD, you're focusing really hard on the problem. You are not going to give up till you solve it. Spectrum is amazing for ordering data. There are so many different positive traits that we know of as neurodiversity that instead of running from them, when it comes to creativity, embrace them. So take a moment right now and inventory your skills. What are you good at? What types of thinking really work for you? And what types don't? Do you see patterns that others miss? These are all innovation fuel. Understand what your fuel is. Now, I also want you to make a profound mental shift. When something doesn't work, stop saying, I guess I'll have to live with it, or this sucks, but what can you do? Your answer always to something you're unhappy with is, I will fix this. I will solve this. Commit to making it better and maybe change the world on the way. So you're going to make it better. You don't have to do it today. You don't have to come up with the solution right away. You don't have to do it tomorrow, but you will solve the problem, and that's your new mindset. So today's challenge, make a resume. Not a regular resume, a resume of your failures. And here's the key. Okay, I know it's weird. I'm going to make a list of my failures, and that's going to help me how? It's going to help you because every failure is a step on the road to success. List 10 times you failed. Just do it. That's today's homework assignment. And list ways, at least 3 of them, that each failure set you up for success later. Each failure improved how you function. Just keep in mind Thomas Edison's incredible perspective on this. He says, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I discovered 10,000 ways that don't work. Failure and opportunity are different sides of the same coin. Use every failure as an opportunity. So day 2, problem identification. Inventors have a real superpower. They can see the world as a collection of solvable puzzles and problems. And starting today, we are going to train that muscle. So I want you to get a notebook or use a note app on your phone, and every day document at least one problem you encounter or one fascinating, gripping fact, thing, solution, because your brain knows what kinds of problems you're focusing on. Subconsciously, you have a pretty good inventory of the types of things that get you excited when you think about solving problems. And that means that subconsciously, you are giving credit to certain solutions that you know are going to be in your wheelhouse, but you don't quite have the problem to fit them to. Don't let that solution just pass you by only because you can't figure out what problem it solves. That goes in your notebook too. Problems and solutions, they don't always arrive in the same order. I have a video about that. Definitely capture both of them and make a promise to yourself. For every problem you encounter, commit that you will solve this. Tell yourself, My subconscious will work on this. I will solve this. If you do meditation, that can even be part of your meditation ritual is I'm going to solve these problems. Subconscious, please pay attention to them. It works for me, doesn't work for everyone. But some version of paying attention to what problems you're working on solving is critical. And don't self-limit. Some solutions might become groundbreaking patents, and others might just make your personal life smoother. Others, you might think that's just not even something that's feasible. But don't necessarily limit yourself. They're all valuable. Ask yourself, who might benefit from this solution? Feasibility, we can deal with later. Right now, it's time to let your brain explore and identify some things that you're going to solve. Let's move up to day 3, brainstorming, ideation. Brainstorming is an art form. If you have innovation partners, after you get an NDA in place, we'll talk about that later, brainstorm with them, bring them in. And diversity in your brainstorming session is not just a nice to have, it's pretty essential. More perspectives mean more potential solutions. Cultural differences can mean differences in approaching a problem. Educational differences means differences in terms of the tools you have to solve the problem. Even the type of education you had. Someone who went to law school learns to approach problems in a very different way than someone who got a PhD in math. Neither way is necessarily better for solving a problem, but I can tell you this, putting both of them together in the same room is the way to solve problems. Diversity of thought is really important in your brainstorming. Now, let's talk about terrible ideas and good ideas. There are no such things during brainstorming. They're simply ideas. Because my bad idea might lead someone else to an interesting take on it, which might lead someone else to an interesting solution. The fact that my idea doesn't work the way I formulated it isn't an opportunity to criticize me. It's an opportunity to build on me or to just say, okay, well, let's write that one down and we'll move on to the next one if no one else can build on it. It's really important to understand the importance of brainstorming. Now, once you're through the no judgment, we'll throw out every idea, then you're going to have to filter for practicality and expertise. If something's outside of your field, you might have to bring in a specialist. If you need a specific kind of material to put your thing together, you might need a material scientist. You might not have one in the room. Now, let me tell you a quick story about brainstorming, the importance of diversity. Okay? A team was asked this very simple question. Can you push something through a hole that is 1 millimeter in size and have it self-assemble into something many orders of magnitude larger on the other side? And this was a team of mechanical engineers. Well, guess what? They were thinking about machines and how they could do this with machines and make it happen. And there wasn't really a good solution. What they needed in there was a biologist. Because any biologist would have told you, oh, just take a couple cells from a coral reef, push them through that hole, and you'll have a coral reef on the other side. Biology has self-assembled since the beginning of life. But mechanical engineers might not have that in mind. That's why you need diversity in your brainstorming sessions. Now let's go to day 4. Day 4 is research. It's time for a little bit of detective work, time for a little bit of research. Some people might think that this is a more boring part. I don't. I think it's exciting to see what else is out there. Now, you do have to make a choice. Okay, it's really important when you are researching prior art, which means stuff that is in the field of your invention that came before your invention. When you're researching it, you really have to keep track of what you looked at because you're eventually going to have to disclose that to the patent examiner. So as you go through your prior art search, you have to keep track of what you looked at because if you don't disclose things that are material to the question of patentability to the patent office, you're going to end up with an invalid patent. So if you learn about it, write it down. If you don't know about it, of course, you don't have to disclose it. It's one of those things. Ideally, you are going to find some interesting information that helps you dimensionalize your idea, refine your idea, make it solve things that you didn't anticipate it would solve. This is a stage where you take the seeds of the idea and you let them grow. Next up, you got to reduce your idea to practice. You cannot protect an abstract idea. It just can't be done. It's not considered in the US anyhow patentable subject matter. And ideas have never been patentable. Inventions have. An idea can't be patented. Yeah, it would be cool to have a way to light things indoors isn't an invention. If I take a filament and put electricity through it and it luminesces, that's an invention. An idea is it would be kind of cool to come up with a cure for cancer. An invention is if you combine these chemicals in this format and you put it into someone in this way, it reduces tumor size. That's the invention. Next up, day 5, proof of concept. So you need to take your ideas and reduce them from an idea into an invention, and that's called reduction to practice. Okay, can you build a prototype? That is proof that you have the invention completed in your head, because whatever the prototype does, you've proven can be done with it. But you can also reduce things to practice in a different way. It's called constructive reduction to practice. And as a practical matter, that's what patents have now. They don't have a requirement anymore, they used to submit a working prototype. Now you just have to describe it in a way that a person of ordinary skill in that field could build it. So this is really helpful, for example, if you're working on cold fusion, because you're unlikely to have the equipment in your garage to build a prototype. But you can describe how to build the prototype so that others who do have the equipment can build it. And that's constructive reduction to practice. This is where imagination meets execution. And it's an important piece. Now, before we hit day 6, I want to point out these are kind of like the stages of grief, except they're awesome. Stages of grief don't come in order. You can jump back and forth between them. And it's the same thing with the invention process. I mean, you might hit the research phase, realize that you missed a big piece, and then you're back to the ideation or brainstorming phase. With that in mind, let's hit day 6, protection. There are 2 things that you can do quickly, cheaply, easily. The first is file a provisional patent application. The minute you know how to reduce that invention to practice, that's when you should start thinking about filing that provisional patent application. The first person to the patent office will get the patent. So if you delay filing it and someone else comes up with the same invention 6 months later and they file right away, if you file 7 months after you came up with it, you filed second, you're not getting the patent. So definitely file a provisional patent application. I highly recommend using a lawyer, but it can be done without a lawyer. Just make sure you enable it. And, it's not going to be as good as having a lawyer. You might make some errors, but at least you'll have protected your date. Also, non-disclosure agreements are critical. Anyone getting near your invention should sign a non-disclosure agreement. There are technical legal reasons. It's called the on-sale bar, which gives you a year after you put the thing on sale, but it can also count if someone spots it. It's actually fairly complicated because if you're in testing, maybe that's exempt, but don't take a chance. Just get non-disclosure agreements in place and you don't have to worry about it. Now, one thing to ask your lawyer is, how can I get any inventions that the people who are brainstorming with me come up with into my patent without giving up ownership of the patent? That can happen as part of the non-disclosure agreement. You can have an assignment, but it has to qualify under the law of the state that you live in. Even though patents are federal, it's state by state in terms of ownership of patents. They're treated like personal property in that way. So you probably want a lawyer working on that NDA for you. You don't need one, because better to have an NDA that's imperfect than to have no NDA and just go completely unprotected. But even for the brainstorming sessions, okay, let's go back to that. If you're brainstorming and someone else says, oh, well, if you add this specific thing, it would be better, and this specific thing is a fully enabled description of how to improve the invention, if you include that in your patent claims, you have a new inventor. You have to list the person who came up with that idea as an inventor, and they're going to have certain rights in the patent. So be careful about that. Preferably, you're brainstorming with people who are willing to share with each other participation financially in the patent and cooperation in getting the patent prosecuted. Now, day 7. Day 7 is where you dimensionalize the patent application. And what do I mean by dimensionalize? Dimensionalizing a patent is a term that I either came up with or I use in a way that I think other people don't use, which is you need to dimensionalize it so that the world 20 years from now will still have some use for your patent. 15 years, 10 years. Because remember, the patent is good for 20 years from the day you file the utility application, which means 21 years from the day you file a provisional if you file the utility exactly on the 1-year anniversary. And you can sometimes get some extra time, but basically you're looking at 2 decades. How's the world going to change in 2 decades? You got to change your invention to make sure that it tracks. So you're going to invent some things and you'll file immediately for claims on them that are immediately useful. And some things might require, for example, a quantum computing device that's 256 bits, and it's just not financially feasible to incorporate into your device yet. But 15 years from now, 20 years from now, will it? I don't know. You don't know. Include it. Assume that that is possible and describe how to build the invention with it. Okay? You want to make sure the invention remains relevant as technology moves along. When you're dimensionalizing your patent application, remember, it's important to protect the stuff that you plan to do or that you are doing. You know how to do it, you plan to do it, you're doing it. That is core stuff. You have to include it. Stuff you know how to do and you know how to enable that you're not sure you're going to do, but you might, you absolutely should include that in your patent application. Stuff that you can enable, but you're not sure is valuable, is not very expensive to add extra text to the patent application. Disclose it. And here's my trick. It's for free. I'm giving it away, but it is really valuable. If you intend to enter a field, when you're writing your patent application, you should speculate about how others might implement the patent or build with the patent, even if you can't enable it, because there's a disparity in how patents are reviewed. You have to enable something in order to get a patent on it. But all you have to do is mention something in passing, just a couple of words, and the patent office will often use that as a means to tie together 2 different prior art references to reject your competitors for a patent. So over-disclose stuff that you can't enable, because even though you're never going to get protection on it, it's going to sit there as part of the knowledge base of humans. It'll be available to patent examiners to reject competitors' patents. And that way, when you're out licensing your patent, people don't say, well, I only have the ability to get 3% licensing fees, and well, I have to license the patent that implemented your patent better, and so you only get 2%, they get 1%. You don't want to do that. You don't want their patent sitting in the way of anything. So wreck it. Wreck the ability to patent in the areas you don't yet know how to do, because your competitors may be able to figure it out, and you don't want that. So with that, that's your 7 days to becoming an awesome inventor. Remember, every world-changing invention started with someone who refused to accept the world as it is. Every world-changing invention started with someone who thought, why do I think that I'm qualified to invent this? Why do I think that I did it right? Well, trust me, everyone has those doubts. If you have them, just work through them. Just assume that you're good enough, and you will be good enough. Innovation requires creativity. It doesn't require self-confidence. It doesn't require a PhD in the subject you're doing it. All you have to do is be able to enable the invention. So, to conclude, here's your next 7 days. And you don't have to do them in order, but day 1 probably you want to do in order. Day 1, your differences are your strength. Reframe your failures as growth opportunities. When something breaks, when something doesn't work for you, your response is always, I'll solve this. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but I am committed to solving it. Day 2, spot problems everywhere. Document them. No idea is too small because they may grow into something amazing. Day 3, brainstorm wildly and without judgment. Day 4, research the patent landscape, research the invention landscape, research the demand landscape around your invention, and don't be scared to go back to day 3 of brainstorming or day 2 of spotting problems or even reframing it, because this might be a failure. The landscape might tell you there's no demand for it, so reframe it as an opportunity and you're back to day 1. Day 5, proof of concept. You either have to be able to build it or describe it well enough to be built. Day 6, protect your idea. file a provisional patent application, get everyone who gets near your invention to sign a non-disclosure agreement. This kind of excludes your lawyers because of the attorney-client privilege, but, NDAs for everyone else. And finally, imagine the future. How will the tech evolve? How will demand evolve? Be there for that. Make the invention work that far into the future. Let's create something amazing together. I can't wait for you to make the world a better place. And with that, I'm Gary Schuster. This has been Innovation Cafe. Thanks for sticking with me to the end. Give me a like, give me a subscribe, and tune back in for more practical tips on how to be a better inventor.